Hi, thank you. Thank you all for the opportunity. I will subscribe for all the things that have been done during the day. The thanks to Stumble. I will thank Bitspire, the organization, but also I would like to make some disclaimer. This is my first presentation in English. I speak a lot, and I could pronounce things very weird, like binding or binding. I do that. And I would like to create some moments in the talk for the non-coder developers or the non-coder people. And also I would like to thank for the creator of this community, the original creator of this community. And also I will take Clark's note and I will make a presentation that I like. And I will start with numbers. So I will start sharing numbers. So 21 is the number of slides that you will see with code during my presentation. 42 is actually a natural number that succeeds 41 and is before 43. And also is the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. And 12 is the actual number of eggs that Robin cooked yesterday night at 1 a.m. in the morning when I was rehearsing. So that's the magical number today. And I quote from him, "Don't get distracted with me about making eggs. There is nothing special about it." So this is my presentation. So also I would like to ask, where is the German sense of humor? I haven't found it all this time living in Germany. So if you found it, yeah, it's fine. I would like to make, this is a small story. I received in the morning, cold morning, winter in Berlin, I received a call from Hamburg, from Moritz. It says, hey, we have a client that wants to implement a payment gateway. And you're an expert in it, and you will do it, because you did it before with Pay1. And I said, like, well, I did it before. I just help on separating concern. But you're an expert, and you'll know how to do it. And I said, like, well. And then I saw through my Skype screen someone like this. And when Maury gives you that sign, it means you have to do it. So this is the beginning of how can I, several months later, I end up doing a presentation about integrated payment providers and payment gateways and a bunch of memes of it. Or the story of how I moved from this to this. So I also would like to thank Pascal that helped me with this presentation and is the co-author of the gem. And also is a code ninja, and also he doesn't like to be in pics. So he doesn't get in photographer. He really don't want to share his picture with the NSA. So I will talk a little bit about me. I come from there. I have a son that is as weird as me about food. And I like to cook and to bake. And I spend a lot of time on weekends, and this was the bread before coming here for my breakfast. Also, I like stand-up comedy a lot, and I like him. And I like 3D puzzles from Hanayama. It's a very weird puzzle system, and it keeps me busy quite a lot. So I'm also spend a lot of time thinking things. Like this morning, I will give you this question for you to think about it. This is an old question, and it's how old would you like to say you were if you didn't know where you born? It's a good question. And if you start a little bit more into the questioning, why is there something instead of nothing? I will just start with it. So Maurice said, we have this Klarna client, and this Klarna client wants us to implement something about an iframe, a payment gateway. I don't really know what is right now. He closed the Skype conversation. So I will get back to this, but before so when he told me that, I said, okay, I will pack my tools and I will start researching. So this is a story how I deep down into the code and understood how payment works before implementing a new payment gateway. So in order for cooking here, you will need these tools. You need Pry Debugger, Awesome Print, and that line that I use a lot during my debugging. So I'm sorry for the person that is behind. It's sometimes easy to, not easy to do. So About this talk, I will divide this talk in 3 areas. One is where to put binding pry during the code. I will just show you here. It's a good place where you can put an object and inspect what is it inside, the relationships, etc. I also will like to fly over the process and explain what a gateway class is, or what a payment gateway are, and also describe how our process of how we develop Klarna gateway. I would like you, from this presentation, to take 3 things home. One is an overall understanding of the process, how payment works, and it's just the understanding and not really the whole full explanation. An insight of how complex is the process, and so how you can measure in your development how to work with it, how to approach to it, and also hopefully start a conversation about it, and feedback loop, conversation in Slack, etc., because it's okay, simple. So I was in front of a computer. I have a button. It's called place order, and I didn't know how from there you can actually charge my credit card. And I just pressed that button, and my credit card is charged, and I didn't know anything. So it was like, what just happened? So at the moment, I knew 5 things happened in that moment. Order were created somewhere. I just put something in the cart. The order is there. It was created before. It was created in that moment. I don't know. There was an order in the database that represents that particular order. The current order was about to be moved to complete. So it wasn't confirmed. It was about to be moved to complete. The order is an state machine object, and it follows the shopping cart progression. It was a surprise. And order can have many payments. This will be important for later. And order are complete only if those payments succeed. So if you succeed in the payment, the order will be moved to complete, what was interesting to discover. So let's fly over the process. Let's get from I press the button to I get the payment, I get my credit card charge, what was going on. So I divide this in 5 steps, or there are 5 logical steps. First is the checkout, the order, the payment method, the provider, and an API solution. You don't need to remember it right now. So we will move from here. I place the order to there. Hey, Klarna, in our case, Klarna, we accept your payment, and it's complete. Thank you very much. Or auto capture and all the magic, right? So first step will be checkout controller. In the checkout controller, I receive the formulary. This is a nice place to put a good binding prime. And basically here you will have the data from the formulary before it's populated into the order. And this order update attributes does a lot of stuff. It's very complex, very interesting tool. But here is a good place to stop and check what is these update parameters, what is in the request header environment, and what is the order, and what is the state. So check, stop here and inspect. Then in the same controller, you will get the same controller will try to move the order forward, either by next in previous state, or if the order is confirmed, it will move it to complete. And before that, before moving to complete, the order itself will say, hey, process payment before complete. So basically, it will say, give me the money. So whatever you do, before you do it, try to get the money, ensure the money. And that will happen in the order itself. There is a process that says blah, 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 blah. Good point to put a binding prime. Good point to inspect what is the order, the state, the relationships, etc. That was my digging down. So I wanted to see what is this process payment, what was the state, etc. So basically it says, if I got the money, it's fine. If I don't got the money, well, there is more stuff to do, and then return false. And afterwards, you can read in process payment, this is process payment with process, that basically says, I will send this process method to somewhere inside the payment. So, but wait a second, I have just talked about 3 classes, checkout, order, and payment, and it's a little bit confusing, but really what's going on is that it's just mixins inside the order, so we were all the time talking about the order object and how it works, so we haven't left the order object so far. It's just distributed in 3 classes, 2 mixins and the class. What takes us to the last process, so we get there, we want to process the payment with process. And process the payment with process basically says, give me all the unprocessed payments and just public send that method process. And that method process will go to the payment object, and the payment object will say, OK, some testing, and basically will take a decision even I purchase or authorize, what it translates to give me the money now or make sure I will get the money when I deliver. So that's the difference between purchase and authorize. And if it's a credit card, for Klarna, it's completely different. So for example, if you dip a little bit down more in the process payment code, you will find that everything that happens in those method process ends up delegating the method to the payment method. So the payment method will receive either character void, cancel, or a public action to get the money. So the object that is actually processing the information is the payment method. And this payment method is basically like the object that has the know-how how to process the payment. So now I can start my talk. This is what is common in Solidus. And let's try to explain what a payment is. A payment is basically an object that holds the information about the payment, is attached in a one-to-many relationship with the order. And this relationship basically holds in database that the fact that there was a payment and not how this payment is processed or what the status of the payment is. A payment source is a class that I don't fully understand. I understand that in how it works and what are the consequences of having this class and are related to the graphic user interface, permissions, and possible actions that you can do. It represents also the time of payment. As a payment can have types, and there is a relationship there. And we use it. We create our own Klarna payment source because we need to hold some information particular. And the payment method is basically a class, an object that is attached to the payment that says, hey, I know how to process the payment. I will not necessarily allow. So the payment will say, payment method, please do your job and tell me true or false. So let's learn from an example. The first payment method that you will get in default Solidus is the bogus. It's the simplest one to read. It has authorized purchase credit, capture, void, and cancel. Those common interface basically describe what you can do with a payment, and it's the base to understand what's going on in the rest, and it's its own provider, and we will get back to that. It's a gateway that is its own provider. So payment method in his parent, so the bogus his parent is the gateway, and the gateway has a line that says, okay, whatever I receive as an order delegated to the provider. So in the bogus, before, is its own provider, so whatever is called on itself. And that's it. I think so I still don't know how to do PayPal or credit card. I need to know where the magic is. But before that, I think I will need to recapitulate to see where we have been gone. So first, we receive the form in the checkout. The form is updated in the order. The order triggers the payment in the process of before complete. Then the payment calls the payment method and pass the message, the task, to perform the task because it's supposed to know the know-how. And the payment method says, OK, I don't know how to do this, delegate it to the provider that is inside the payment method. So at the end, it's the provider who really has the know-how. And so I don't really know in this moment what the provider is, how is it working, and how is it being magical. So still how the credit card is charged, where is the money. So it just happened that in that moment, the magic was here. The magic was in the Solidus gateway in Active Merchant, that is basically the Swiss Army knife with the Swift army. So all together, like it comes with everything, it deploys. And if you want to see, so basically is what John Horton maintains, is this thing that basically gives us superpowers in our stores. And if we inspect one provider, that is the PayPal provider, it basically says, I'm the PayPal gateway, and if you actually want to tell me how to do something, you will have to ask to the active merchant billing payment gateway, so it's an active merchant class. An active merchant billing PayPal gateway will know how to do all the process. What I just discovered is an SOAP XML request, and it's a long class with a lot of methods, but I just found that there is one method called commit that basically build a request, an XML, very complex object, send it to an endpoint, parse, create a response, build a response, etc. So it does all the job. But what will happen if what you really want to build is not there? It's not there in our Swiss Army knife. So, well, I think like I will try to help you there. I will let you with a template. This is a template. Let's call it yet another gateway, and basically you create some preferences that will be displayed in your backend. You point it to a provider or not. Could be. You can do the bogus trick as well. It could be. You give it a name, a method type that is basically an identifier, or you give it a source. And the class that will actually have the know-how, that is the gateway, the billing, yet another gateway, there you will need to implement purchase, authorize, capture, credit, cancel, and a couple of more that we have implemented because we need more magic in our gateway. So, for example, if you want to implement authorize, you can do some API requests, make log inside. Just make sure that at the end you return an active merchant billing response or a spree billing response from now on. That is the refactoring that was done during the hackathon. And so as long as you process, you type here your know-how, you create a response, and you pass this response wrap in this object, you have complete the reason for existing in a gateway provider. So Maury said, OK, Klarna, second call. We have some specification from Klarna. So PayPal redirects you to another page, so they decide to put an iframe. The person will not leave the current page in order to process information, and also you are not allowed to touch user information at all. So you will have to deal with an iframe in your page. And it was like, yeah. And also, they haven't touched Ruby ever. They don't know anything about Ruby. Very good. So our Klarna client is this client. They are basically a Swedish company operating in Sweden, US, Germany, and they offer, in a nutshell, they give you credit for buying a lot of stuff on internet. You pay them in quotes, in installment, and they will give the merchant the money upfront. But it's really good for the merchant, and there is no risk for the merchant. And the requirement was that you have to deal with an iframe. There is no Ruby implementation for the API. So we create a Ruby implementation for the API. We divide the concern. The gem is, the gateway is something, and the communication with the API is something else. And we basically have to deal with the iframe in JavaScript jQuery. So we, in the nutshell, it passes function as a callback. When the callback is done, it basically executes the code you have passed. And it looks like this. It's when you select in the default, when you select, it opens an iframe and tells you, hey, you are planning to pay, I don't know, $204. How do you want to pay it? And when you select here, it will give you feedback. It will give you, I already assume this is pay and this is fine. It fills a diff. We have to deal with a lot of feedback here, but it's fine. It's the way they operate. And in the backend, you will see something like this. Hey, someone once this order is complete. Someone wants to pay with Klarna. It is accepted by us, so it means there is no risk. You can charge this money. And there is more than you can do with this particular gateway. You can obviously edit the payment, but also you can refresh the time of extend the time that this payment can survive, because in theory you have 2 weeks to get the money. So you have 2 weeks to deliver, 1 week or 2 weeks to deliver your good and get the money. Otherwise, the credit is canceled. You can capture the money. You can say, OK, give me the money. You can cancel it. Or you can partially capture the money and then tell Klarna, OK, we delivered half of the goods, and the other half we will not be able to deliver. Please return the money to the client. We cannot deliver. We cannot fulfill this contract. So these 2-3 things extra that are not in the Solidus default gateway, we have to add it into the Klarna gateway to support these 2 buttons or 3 buttons extra there. So you can deal with a little bit of more Klarna operability, I will say. So the Klarna gateway, to fulfill this, we create 2 gems. The SDK, we call it the SDK very pretentiously, but it's just an API implementation. You can find it here. It's hopefully self-documented. We would like you to destroy it if you can. So read it, use it. It's tested in Sinatra. So in order to test this, and you will read that in the code, I have to create a Sinatra server inside the specs, run a full version of the code, run it with Capybara, and click buttons in their iframe, and get feedback, and run things, and then start the test. If you see that in the code, it was the only solution I had in that moment. So I'm sorry that you have to read that such complexity just to test how an API works, but we don't have any other option here. And the Klarna gateway, that is basically our Solidus integration of the gateway based on the SDK that communicates with the API. There is a blog post that Maurice wrote about it and how it's performed. And in a nutshell, our gateway is basically a class that points to active merchant billing Klarna gateway. I give it that name just to follow convention. It can be just Klarna gateway or any namespace Klarna gateway. The method name is Klarna gateway. It has a source that is pre-Klarna credit payment that basically holds the information about that particular credit that the person tries to use to get the money, so to buy the goods in the order. So inside the billing Klarna gateway, there we implement authorize, capture, refund, get, acknowledge, and extend period, release, cancel, and get an update source. So it's slightly more complex than a default behavior. It does more because you need to, Klarna has these particular features as a payment gateway. Inside capture, for example, the method that says give me the money right now, basically we use Klarna API with the client. We call the client. The Klarna API is more, it has a multiple clients because it's a slightly complex. Their API they implement is slightly complex. So basically you say, give me the money, I give you the order, and I give you the amount, and then your money will transfer. If the response is success, we return an active merchant billing response with true or false, and we also update the payment source with the information we get from the client. So here is basically how you use the source. Here we update the source by saying, well, give me the source of this, because we have to, in this source, we have to put the information that came from the server that is related to this particular credit. And I think I was really fast during my speech, during my talk, because I don't have much than saying thanks. So, and remember, then if you're stressed, you can use it. So thanks. I think I was fast, and I will open for questions. And just as a quick note, I am a social person. I really like to talk in person, and if you send me an email that is really long, I may not read it, and this is not a joke. So this is something that we live in BitSpy. If it's too long, I don't read emails. So.
All right, well, thanks for the day. We're going to open it up for questions right now. If you could please remember to repeat the questions so we have it for the video later on as it comes.
Fantastic.
Had you worked much with payment gateways before this?
The question was if I work much, like if I have previous experience working with payment gateways. Yes, I help, Martin in moving self-develop gem for Pay1. They developed inside the Pay1. It was crazy, so I helped to divide the API from the gem, and then there's when I really understood that you have to divide the API, your communication with the server, from the Solidus implementation. Otherwise, you will end up with a mess of code, untestable, and like really difficult to read and modify.
What kind of challenges have you seen at the gateway interaction point? You know, not necessarily with Solidus, but in actually talking to these gateways all over the world.
Well, the question was what kind of challenges I actually saw during the process of integration, talking related to the API and talking to the servers. During the development, the biggest challenge is unknown exceptions. So like when you're developing, you really don't know the API, you have to develop with the API. Sometimes you get exceptions that are quite cryptic. And Solidus will not give you like more information than a bubbling of an exception that was cryptic. So it was like solving that part was a slightly challenging, but it's not more difficult than try and try and try and try and try and try. It works at the end. Any more questions?
You said you do partial refunds with Klarna?
We do partial refunds, yes.
How do you identify which items are being refunded?
That's a good question. So the question was, how do we identify doing partial refunds with Klarna?
Or partial capture, either way.
No, you don't. Sorry. No, when you do partial capture or partial refund, you basically deal with the amount, not with the line items that are particularly refunded. So you refund, you get $100, and then you refund $100 minus something if you want to remove expenses, for example. It's kind of difficult to get that right. We have time. You have a lot of time for questions because I fly. Well, a difficult topic. So the question was, tell us about Venezuela. I mean, what it says in the news is true, I guess. And I've been out of Venezuela for almost 15 years. So I'm not the person to tell really what's going on.
Have you looked at Klarna through Adyen?
Klarna?
Klarna through Adyen, or just directly Klarna?
Through Adyen.
Well, I don't know what's that.
There's a payment gateway, Adyen.
Adyen, oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question is if I look through a gateway gem called Adyen, right?
It's a payment gateway called Adyen.
Okay, it's a payment gateway called Adyen, and if we look through it, no, sorry. I don't know. Oh, more questions? You have time. I have time. Moritz.
Just a quick note, I saw that the links in the slides were wrong. We moved
Oh no.
over to GitHub. You will find it there, not in our files.
Okay, so the question was that the GitHub, there are GitHub links, are not wrong, they work, are in BitSpy domain, but there are now GitHub links that I was not aware of, and yeah, that was Pascal, the no-face guy, who did it. More questions? Then, thank you very much.